Thank you, Shelley. You may be seated. Pray with me, please. Creator God, we give you thanks for this day, for this is the day that you have made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. We thank you for your call to each of us, no matter our age or station in life, to be your advocates for justice, for our neighbors, known and unknown. And let the church say, now that's your part. You know what that part is, right? Let the church say, oh, it sounds like a good Episcopal amen. I'm an ordained Lutheran minister. It sounds about like a Lutheran amen, you know. It's good to be here at Christ Church. Thank you, Shelley, for inviting me to come and be a part of your services on this Sunday, the second Sunday in the Epiphany season. I sometimes call it Dr. Martin Luther King Sunday as well, thinking of the festivities that are happening today in our city, around the country, and then, of course, tomorrow on his birthday. I want to give thanks to God for the ministry of this congregation over the many decades in the U District. You know, just think of your ministry here. I think of the beginnings of Earth Ministry in this congregation. I think of the good work that you do with those that are out on the street, those that don't have a place to lay their head, that are looking for food and shelter from day to day. And I think of the core of the gospel is about that, is about reaching out to our neighbors and sharing God's love with them, that comes with its blessings and with its challenges as well. A little bit about Faith Action Network, and then my thoughts on today's gospel. Faith Action Network is a statewide, interfaith, social justice, social change organization that educates and organizes and mobilizes people of all faiths, and for that matter, people of no faith, to take action with the power brokers and the decision makers of our communities, of our state, and of our nation. And as I say, power brokers and decision makers, elected officials, politicians, goes through your minds, right? And you think, I'm not sure I can do that with some that are in office. But the text, and it was so good to see in the first service, the text call us to pray for our elected officials. You can't find elected officials in the text, right? But you know what I'm talking about. No matter who we vote for and who we are of like mind with in that realm of daily life. Faith Action Network does its work through two networks. A network of advocating faith communities that Christ Church is now a part of. We celebrate that. We'll be sharing our frame certificate with all of you shortly. And a network of individual faith advocates, all of us, using our voice to advocate for justice in the halls of power. Our network of advocating faith communities makes up most of the denominations of Christendom, and as well as the wonderful family of God. And I'm stretching my arms about as far as I can stretch. That encompasses our Jewish brothers and sisters. We have a couple of mosques that are part, that have formally aligned with Faith Action Network. One over in West Richland, and one just over in the East Bay. The Sikh Gurdwara, in fact, this past week in the Hall of Power that we know as the state legislature in Olympia, the governor gave his State of the State address on Tuesday, and we were proud as Faith Action Network to be able to have A Sikh leader, Dr. Yasmeet Singh, opened it up with a prayer from the Sikh community and comments related to his faith. Faith Action Network organizes all of our advocates. We encourage you to join Faith Action Network. There's a display in the Undercroft later on to sign up for that. Into our 49 legislative districts that we have, this congregation, this building, is in the 43rd legislative district, where the Speaker of the House presides and is your state representative from this district, and the 10 congressional districts. We try and also keep an eye and monitor issues before the other Washington, so that we can be effective in creating the social change that we desire with our many coalition partners that we have. Right now, we are beginning our second week of a 9-week legislative session, and your voice is important during this time. There are important bills. I'll speak just a little bit later on about some of those that will be heard tomorrow that will help many in our state stay out of poverty and away from homelessness and create a safer community. Our gospel lesson for today is, of course, John's version of Jesus calling, recruiting his disciples. And I believe that it is based not so much on the power of Jesus, though you could certainly take that away, especially in terms of the interaction with Nathanael. How did you know? But to me, there is another power that is going on in our text today, and that is the power of story and the voice behind that story. I'm sure if we would gather and split up in small groups today, you could think of some of those stories that were passed on to you about your family. Stories that were passed on about where you grew up. Stories about the experiences of others, perhaps even a stranger that has been shared with you in your lifetime. When I think of our sacred text that we have and treasure, those did not just fall out of heaven on written pages, but were originally oral traditions that were shared with the community. And when I think of the work of advocacy, the work of social justice, those stories are so important to motivate us to find our voice and to use our voice with the power brokers and decision makers of our day. The stories when you actually sit down, and if you ever had a cup of coffee with an elected official, and perhaps you have, many of them have a faith tradition. In fact, Senator Jamie Peterson, Capitol Hill, Central Lutheran Church, is worshiping this morning, as we are. If you had that cup of coffee and you asked them, what really influences you? Is it the lobbyists that come and visit your office? I think Senator Peterson, along with the Speaker, Mr. Speaker, as his name is known by, would say, no, it's the stories. When I meet with member of staff, members of Congress in Washington, D.C., as I will soon here in the next week or two, Paul, give us the stories. We need the stories of the people that are impacted, that this congregation meets on a daily basis, and other faith communities around our state, no matter where they are, urban, suburban, or in rural parts of our state. When I think of this day, and I think of the great legacies that have been passed on from the civil rights era, this is the 14th of January, yes, the second Sunday of the Epiphany. And tomorrow, as well as today, there will be many gatherings, festivities, music. Tomorrow morning from 10 a.m. to noon in the State House and the State Senate chambers, there will be singing of choirs, speaking from voices about the importance of civil rights and human rights. And I think of the voice of Dr. King and the call of God that came upon him. And I think of the call of the disciples of the 12. And yes, our call may not seem as dramatic. We are not all the great mighty preachers of Martin Luther King Jr., but the call of God comes upon each and every person the same. The call is not different. It's how we live that call out. No matter of your race or your gender, sexual orientation, we are each a child of God. And we each have a voice. We may not feel that voice is important in terms of the power brokers and the decision makers of the day. But I think what Dr. King's message in life was about, you need to find that voice. Someone that loves you will help you find that voice within you and to use that voice for someone in need. And maybe sometimes it might be yourself. When I think of the word advocate, it is a rich word in terms of the English language. It composes the service of our hands that faith communities around this state and around this country and world know that is so important about making sure that food and shelter is provided for our neighbors. Advocacy also speaks of justice coming from our voices. And when you look up, if we had our dictionaries in front of us today, you look up the word advocate, and when you go to the root of that word in Latin, it literally means to call. Episcopalians and Lutherans know something about that four-letter word. When you pass by the baptismal fount, out of the baptismal waters, we are called to be God's advocates for justice in the halls of power. I thank you for having me here this morning. And now the very last part, your homework for later today. This is about your tax dollars at work. You're supposed to laugh at that. It's the 1-800 number, the legislative hotline number. Tomorrow's a holiday. Maybe you have it off, maybe you don't. I have it in the back, but it's 1-800-562-6000. 1-800-562-6000. I urge you to consider on MLK Day, as we call it, on Martin Luther King holiday, to consider using that and calling your state legislator. There's 3 bills that will be heard tomorrow in the state legislature regarding what I feel is one of this country's worst diseases that we have, a social ill. It's called gun violence. The 3 bills that will be heard tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., I'll be down there as well as hundreds of others. And there were hundreds of others on the steps of the Capitol you may have heard just yesterday. They were bearing guns. As divisive as our country is, I encourage you to use that number and say yes to these bills that will promote gun responsibility, not take away anybody's guns. Thank you for the work that you do as individuals, wherever you are, whatever your place is. whatever your station in life is. Thank you for the ministry of this congregation. We at FAN look forward to working with this congregation in the year ahead and the years beyond, that we might together be advocates for justice. Let the church say,